I wasn't expecting her to show up that morning, not after 5 years, not after everything she'd done. She stood at my office door, soaked from the rain, clutching the hand of a little boy who looked nothing like me but everything like the man she chose over me. Her voice trembled when she said my name. Ethan. I didn't know who else to come to. Her once perfect hair was tangled, her confidence gone. She looked small, the same woman who once told me I'd never make it without her. And yet, here she was. Begging. For mercy, for help, maybe for forgiveness I no longer owned. I looked at her, calm, detached. She thought I was still the man she left behind, I whispered. She didn't know I'd rebuilt my empire from her ashes. My name's Ethan Ward. I used to believe love could hold a person together, that if you gave enough, worked enough, loved enough, everything else would fall into place. For 5 years, Maya was my everything. We met in college, she was studying marketing, I was an architecture student buried under sketches and caffeine. She had this way of speaking that made the air around her feel alive, like every word was charged with possibility. I was quieter, steady, the kind of man who believed hard work could fix anything. When she graduated, I didn't. I dropped a semester to help pay her tuition after her father lost his job. I didn't think much of it back then, love felt like a shared investment, not a sacrifice. After college, we moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment above a bakery. The walls smelled like sugar and burnt bread, but we were happy. I worked at a small architectural firm during the day, and waited tables at night. She'd stay up, curled on the couch with her laptop, editing proposals and mock campaigns, sometimes falling asleep before I even got home. There were nights I'd find her asleep at the table, her fingers still on the keyboard. I'd carry her to bed, tuck her in, and she'd mumble, half dreaming, "You're my forever, Ethan." And I believed it. Our love wasn't glamorous, but it was ours, built out of ramen noodles, thrift store furniture, and late-night laughter. I still remember one night clearly. It was raining hard, the kind that drowned out every sound in the city. We sat on the balcony, sharing cold takeout noodles straight from the box. She took my hand and traced invisible lines across my palm. One day, she said, smiling softly, "You'll design our home. With big windows, a garden, and a studio just for you." I smiled back. "And what about you?" She leaned into me. "I'll fill it with light." That line stayed with me for years, "I'll fill it with light." Back then, I didn't realize she meant someone else's. When Maya got her first real job offer, I was thrilled. A marketing firm downtown, sleek, modern, the kind of place with glass walls and espresso machines that cost more than our rent. I remember helping her pick out her first office outfit, a navy blazer that made her look so confident it almost scared me. She kissed me before leaving for her first day. "I'll make us proud," she said. And she did, for a while. She'd come home talking about the big clients, the fancy rooftop meetings, and the brilliant creative director who believed in her ideas. His name was Ryan. I didn't think twice when she mentioned him. I was proud of her success, proud she was finally getting the recognition she deserved. She'd laugh, tell me stories about office politics and marketing disasters, and I'd listen, smiling through the exhaustion of double shifts. But over time, something changed. The laughter faded. The stories got shorter. And the late nights got longer. She'd come home past midnight, saying they were finishing up a pitch. Her perfume would be stronger, her phone always face down on the table. Once, when I hugged her, I caught a faint whiff of cologne that wasn't mine. She pulled away too quickly. I didn't confront her, not then. I told myself I was imagining it. That maybe success had just changed her schedule, not her heart. One night, I stayed up waiting for her. The clock hit 2 a.m. before I heard the key turn in the lock. She looked startled to see me awake. "You're up?" she asked, voice cautious. I smiled weakly. "Couldn't sleep." "You okay?" "Yeah, Just tired, she said, brushing past me. She went straight to the shower. I watched her silhouette behind the frosted glass, still the same shape, still the same woman I loved, but she felt miles away. When she came to bed, she didn't curl into me like she used to. She just turned away. That night, I stared at the ceiling until dawn, wondering when love had stopped feeling warm. Maya still said she loved me, sometimes, in passing, like an afterthought. I held on to those moments, thinking if I just worked harder, earned more, proved myself more, she'd come back to me completely. But love doesn't work like that. You can't outwork someone's fading heart. And deep down, I think I already knew, the woman tracing dreams into my palm was already drawing them for someone else. I used to know the rhythm of her days, when she laughed, when she sighed, when she needed silence. But lately, her rhythm changed. It started small. Missed calls. Late replies. A new perfume I didn't buy. She said her firm had landed a massive campaign and everyone was putting in overtime. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. She'd worked so hard to get where she was, and I wasn't about to be the insecure boyfriend who couldn't handle her success. But then, overtime became every night. And work events filled her weekends. I'd wake up to an empty side of the bed and cold coffee on the counter with a note that said, "Don't wait up." At first, I told myself this was what ambition looked like, sacrifices, long hours, dedication. But deep down, something in me felt off, like watching a shadow slip out of the room just before dawn. One Friday, I came home early from the firm. My boss had cut hours again, which secretly relieved me, maybe we'd finally have dinner together. When I opened the door, Maya was in the living room, laughing into her phone. The kind of laugh that came from her stomach, the kind she used to save for me. She didn't notice me right away. I caught the tail end of her words. "You always know how to make me smile, Ryan." The sound of that name froze me. Ryan. I remembered her mentioning him once or twice, my creative director, my mentor, just a colleague. Nothing more. But now, the tone, the warmth, it felt different. I stepped inside quietly. She noticed and quickly ended the call. "Hey, you're home early," she said, her smile too quick, too rehearsed. "Yeah," I said. "Slow day at the office." I waited for her to explain, to mention his name. She didn't. Instead, she walked past me to the kitchen. "You hungry?" I was just about to order takeout. "Maya," I said gently. "Who were you talking to?" She froze for half a second, not long enough for guilt, just long enough for my stomach to twist. "Just work stuff." Ryan had a question about tomorrow's pitch. At 8 in the evening. She rolled her eyes. "It's advertising, Ethan. Deadlines don't sleep." I wanted to believe that. But her tone, sharp, defensive, wasn't like her. I nodded anyway, pretending I was convinced. "Right. Of course." She sighed, softer now. "Don't start, okay? You're paranoid, Ethan. Not every text means something." I didn't say it did, I said quietly. But her words echoed long after she left the room. That night, I lay beside her, watching her scroll through her phone under the blanket. She turned her body slightly away, just enough that I couldn't see the screen. "Can't sleep?" I asked. She hummed. "Just catching up on emails." Her thumbs moved fast, too fast for emails. I stared at the ceiling, feeling the kind of ache that doesn't shout, it just hums under your skin, constant and dull. I told myself maybe I was the problem. Maybe she deserved someone more exciting. Someone who wasn't scraping by, someone who didn't smell like blueprints and late-night shifts. Maybe it wasn't enough. A few days later, I met up with Liam, my oldest friend. He worked construction, built like a wall and talked like he'd seen everything twice. He noticed the exhaustion in my face before I even sat down. "You look like hell," he said, sliding me a beer. "Thanks," I muttered. "What's going on? You and Maya okay?" I hesitated. "She's been busy. Work stuff. Late nights. Calls. I don't know, man. Feels like she's somewhere else lately." Liam leaned back, studying me. "You ever think maybe she is somewhere else?" I frowned. "What are you trying to say?" He shrugged. "Look, I'm not saying she's cheating. But I've seen what happens when people start drifting apart. You try to pull them back, hold tighter, and sometimes that just pushes them away faster." I looked down at my drink, his words sinking deeper than I wanted them to. "I can't just give up," I said quietly. He sighed. "I didn't say give up. I said stop bleeding for someone who won't even hand you a bandage." I laughed weakly. "That's poetic, coming from a guy who thinks ketchup counts as a vegetable." He smirked, but his eyes stayed serious. "Just, don't lose yourself trying to keep someone else." For a while, I tried pretending everything was fine. I made her favorite meals. I left her notes before work. I even bought her a bracelet for her birthday, simple, silver, engraved with "To My Light." When she opened it, her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Ethan, you didn't have to," she said, her tone soft but distant. "I wanted to," I said. She kissed my cheek lightly. "Thank you. It's beautiful." But she didn't wear it once after that night. The distance grew in invisible inches, not enough to cause a fight, just enough to make the air between us heavy. Her phone was always face down now. She turned off notifications when I walked into the room. Sometimes she'd take calls on the balcony, whispering like the walls might betray her. I tried not to snoop. I hated the idea of being that kind of man, paranoid, jealous, desperate. But one evening, my resolve broke. She'd left her phone on the couch while she was in the shower. It lit up with a message. I didn't mean to look, but the name flashed across the screen before I could look away. "Ryan, wish you were here tonight." My chest tightened. She came out of the bathroom moments later, humming to herself, towel around her hair. She saw me looking at the phone and froze. I started. She snatched it off the couch, her face pale. "You went through my phone." "No. It just lit up." "Unbelievable, Ethan." Her voice cracked, not with guilt, but anger. "You really don't trust me, do you?" I stood there, trying to find words that didn't sound pathetic. He texted you." "Because we're working together," she snapped. "You think I'm sleeping with everyone who sends me a text?" Her words hit like slaps, not because they were cruel, but because I realized I didn't know the truth anymore. She stormed into the bedroom, slamming the door. That night, I slept on the couch. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. Made coffee, hummed to the radio, even smiled. But I could feel it, something inside her had shut off. Days turned into weeks. Our conversations became shallow: weather, bills, groceries. The intimacy we once had turned into polite coexistence. I'd come home from work and find her on the balcony, staring at her phone. She didn't even pretend to hide it anymore. One night, I cooked dinner, pasta with her favorite white sauce, candles lit, soft music. I wanted, just once, to feel like us again. She sat across from me, scrolling through her phone as I tried to talk about a new project at work. "Sounds good," she murmured, eyes still on the screen. I watched her, the glow of her phone reflected in her eyes, brighter than anything I could give her now. "Maya," I said quietly. "Can we talk? Really talk?" She sighed, setting her phone down. "About what?" "About us." She looked at me, but it wasn't the same look she used to give. It wasn't love. It was a pity. "Ethan, she said softly, "You're a good man. You always have been." That sentence, "You're a good man," felt like a goodbye dressed as a compliment. I forced a smile. "That's not what I asked." She looked down. "I just think maybe we've grown apart. Or maybe you've grown away," I said, my voice cracking. Silence. Only the clink of her fork against the plate. She didn't deny it. And somehow, that hurt more than any confession ever could. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat on the balcony alone. The city buzzed below, indifferent. The stars looked like scattered glass, beautiful, distant, untouchable. I thought about Liam's words. If someone's drifting away, holding tighter won't bring them back. I'd held on so hard my knuckles had turned white. And she still slipped through. But I wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. Because somewhere deep down, a part of me still believed she'd remember what we had, the noodles, the laughter, the dreams we built when we had nothing but love. I didn't know it then, but love wasn't the only thing slipping away that night. It was also the man I used to be. I still remember the day the truth stopped hiding. It was a Sunday, gray sky, wind sharp enough to taste rain. Maya said she was meeting a client for coffee before heading to the office. I didn't argue, I'd stopped doing that weeks ago. But something inside me itched, a quiet voice that whispered, "Go see." I told myself it was just to surprise her, maybe walk her home. Nothing more. The cafe sat on the corner of 5th and Maple, the same one where we used to sit after my shifts, sharing one muffin because we couldn't afford two. The place hadn't changed, same flickering light above the counter, same smell of espresso and burnt sugar. But she had. Through the window, I saw her before she saw me. She was laughing, that laugh again, the one that used to belong to me. Across from her sat Ryan, dressed sharp, leaning in too close. Their hands touched across the table, fingers weaving together like it was the most natural thing in the world. I froze. Time didn't stop, but it slowed enough for me to hear the sound of my heart cracking. For a long moment I just stood there, watching. The logical part of me whispered, "Walk away." The rest of me, the part that still believed in us, pushed through the door. The bell chimed. They both looked up. Maya's face was drained of color. Ryan didn't move his hand. "Ethan," she breathed, as if saying my name might undo what I'd just seen. I walked closer, calm, too calm. "Client meeting, huh?" My voice came out steady, almost gentle. Ryan pulled his hand back, eyes darting anywhere but mine. Maya stood, knocking over her chair. "It's not what it looks like," she started. I gave a small, tired smile. "Then what is it, Maya?" "Because from here, it looks exactly like what it looks like." People were watching now, baristas pretending not to, customers half-turned in their seats. But I didn't care. The world had already ended, the rest was just background noise. She swallowed hard. "Ethan, I was going to tell you." I cut her off softly. "You could have just told me I wasn't enough." Her eyes filled, but not with regret, more like pity. "You were, Ethan, just not for the life I wanted." There it was. Clean. Precise. Final. I nodded once. "I hope it's worth it." Then I walked out, leaving her standing in the middle of the cafe with her perfect man and her perfect ambitions. The following week blurred. She moved out quietly, like a thief afraid of being caught stealing something already broken. One morning I came home to find her closet empty, her toothbrush gone, her perfume still clinging to the air. A single note sat on the counter, "I'm sorry." No explanation. No fight. Just absence. The apartment felt hollow after that. Every sound echoed. Every object felt misplaced, our mugs, our photos, even the couch still shaped to her body. Nights turned into endless loops of silence and questions. I'd stare at the half-painted wall we'd never finished, remembering her voice saying, "We'll get to it when we have time." Now I had nothing but time. Sleep stopped visiting. Food tasted like dust. Work became unbearable, designing houses when the one I'd imagined had collapsed around me. My boss noticed the missed deadlines, the hollow eyes, the sketches that looked like blueprints for ruins. One Monday he called me into his office. "Ethan, take some time off," he said carefully. "You're not yourself." He was right. I wasn't. I didn't even know who myself was anymore. A month later, the firm let me go. "Budget cuts," they said. But I saw the relief in their eyes. No one wants a ghost on payroll. Bills piled up. Rent came due. I sold my drafting tablet, then my bike, then the ring I'd once planned to give her. Depression doesn't arrive like a storm, it seeps in, slow and quiet, until one day you wake up and realize you've stopped wanting tomorrow. I stopped answering calls, stopped opening messages. Liam showed up once, pounding on my door until I finally let him in. "Jesus, Ethan," he muttered, looking around at the mess, sketches everywhere, empty bottles, unopened mail. "You can't keep doing this." I shrugged. "Doing what?" "Breathing." He grabbed my shoulder. "She left. You didn't. There's a difference." But back then, I wasn't sure there was. Eventually even he stopped coming by. Everyone did. When the landlord taped an eviction notice to my door, I didn't fight it. I packed what little I had into a duffel bag and left before dawn. No destination, just away. I deleted my social media, changed my number, disappeared from the city that had watched me fall apart. Time passed. The world kept moving, and somewhere in that motion, I began to see pieces of her life through other people's screens. I didn't go looking for them, they just found me. A friend of a friend would post something, and there she'd be, Maya, radiant beside Ryan. Vacations in Italy. Rooftop parties. Champagne smiles. She looked happy, free, like betrayal was just another step in her career. And me? I was a ghost scrolling through proof that I'd been replaceable all along. At first it hurt. Then it stopped. Pain has a strange way of burning itself out when there's nothing left to feed it. I started drifting between small towns, picking up contract work where I could, designing storefronts, sketching blueprints for people who couldn't afford real architects. I didn't talk much. I didn't dream much either. Years slipped quietly by. 2 years after she left, I was sitting in a diner, half listening to the news playing on a wall-mounted TV. That's when I heard the name. Breaking story, Ryan Keller, CEO of Ascend Creative, under investigation for financial misconduct and corporate fraud. I looked up. The screen showed Ryan in a suit, surrounded by reporters, face pale, eyes hollow. The voiceover continued, "Sources confirm multiple clients lost millions. Legal action pending. Keller remains unavailable for comment." I stared for a long time, waiting to feel something, anger, satisfaction, anything. But all I felt was quiet. A few days later, I saw a headline online, "Ascend Creative collapses. Key staff disappear as scandal unfolds." Maya's name wasn't mentioned. Her social media vanished soon after. It was like she'd been erased from the world she traded me for. I thought that would bring closure, but it didn't. It just left a hollow space where hate used to live. The truth was, I didn't want revenge back then. I wanted meaning. I wanted to believe the years I gave her hadn't been for nothing. But heartbreak doesn't negotiate. It just demands payment until you have nothing left. So I made a choice. I was done being the man she left behind. If the life she wanted had cost me everything, then I'd build one that would make her ghost irrelevant. Not out of spite, but survival. That was the moment I decided to start over, not rebuild what was lost, but build something new, from the ruins. That night, I packed again, new clothes, new notebooks, a map. I left town with no plan, just the quiet conviction that someday, somehow, I'd return unrecognizable. The road ahead was long, uncertain, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, that was enough. 5 years. That's how long it took for silence to stop feeling like punishment and start feeling like peace. I used to think time healed everything. It doesn't. It just rearranges the pain until it fits somewhere deeper, hidden, manageable, part of the architecture of who you've become. 5 years ago, I was a man living in the shadow of someone else's choices. Now, I am the shadow. Rock bottom, I tell people, taught me more than love ever did. And it's true. When you've lost everything, you learn how to start again from nothing, with precision, with patience, with purpose. After I left the city, I took a train north to a place no one knew my name. I lived cheap, hostels, shared rooms, designing blueprints for small businesses and homes that couldn't afford grandeur. But one day, fate, or maybe irony, threw me a bone. It came in the form of an email from an old contact, Charles Dempsey, a senior architect who'd once reviewed my student portfolio years ago. He remembered my work, said he needed a junior assistant for a short project abroad. I almost didn't reply. But something about that name, Dempsey, felt like a door. I stepped through it. Charles was the kind of man who built empires quietly. Not loud, not boastful, just effective. His firm specialized in large-scale real estate developments in Singapore and Dubai. I started as an assistant, sketching, managing site data, handling what others didn't want. But I watched. Every deal. Every client. Every decision. I learned that the world didn't reward goodness, it rewarded leverage. Charles saw potential in me. He once said, "You have an eye for structures, Ethan, but what you really have is patience. That's rarer than genius." He taught me how to negotiate without raising my voice. How to turn blueprints into assets. How to build things that lasted longer than promises. By the time I was 33, I was no longer sketching homes, I was funding them. I became a silent investor in 3 major developments. My name wasn't on the headlines, but my influence was buried deep in the contracts. Money changes many things, your posture, your tone, your address, but the biggest change was internal. I stopped needing validation. I stopped chasing affection. I stopped waiting for closure from people who had buried me. I built a new company, Ward Holdings, a real estate consulting and investment firm. I hired people who were smarter than me and treated loyalty like currency. My office sat on the top floor of a downtown skyscraper, floor-to-ceiling glass, a skyline that glittered like redemption. Most days, I didn't think about Maya. Not because I'd forgiven her, but because she no longer existed in the world I occupied. Until the day she did. It was a Thursday morning. My assistant, Claire, entered my office carrying her tablet and a cup of black coffee, just the way I liked it. "Morning, sir," she said. "We received a new application for the community housing grant you sponsor through the foundation." I nodded absently. "Go on." "It's from a woman named Maya," she paused, scrolling, "Maya Dawson." I froze. The name sliced through me like a chord I hadn't heard in years. Claire continued, unaware. "She's requesting funding for a small housing project aimed at single mothers. She's also requested a personal meeting with one of the foundation's directors." My heart tightened, not with love, not with hate, but something colder. "Maya Dawson," I repeated quietly. "She used to have another last name." Claire looked up. "Should I schedule a standard review instead?" "No," I said after a long silence. "Set a meeting. I'll take it personally." She blinked. "You will?" "Sir, you never attend the first reviews." "I know," I said. "But I'm curious." She tilted her head. "Curious?" I smiled faintly. I just want to see if ghosts still bleed. That night, I sat in my penthouse, city lights flickering across the glass. I poured a drink and opened the foundation file on my laptop. Her photo was attached. She looked older. Not in the tragic way people age, but in the way that life carves its lessons into you. Her hair was shorter, darker. The bright arrogance in her smile had softened into something weary. In the photo, she was holding a little boy, 4, maybe 5. He had Ryan's eyes. Her bio mentioned she was running a small community workshop, teaching design basics to unemployed women. No mention of Ryan. No trace of their luxury life. So, this was what remained. The woman who once told me I wasn't enough, now asking for help, unknowingly from me. The next few days blurred into meticulous planning, not out of vengeance, but control. I arranged for the meeting under the foundation's banner, concealing my identity. Claire didn't question it, she knew better. Still, part of me wrestled with what this meeting meant. Was it revenge? Closure? Or just curiosity twisted into cruelty? Some nights, I almost cancelled. Other nights, I imagined the look on her face when she'd finally realize who she was asking help from. The truth is, I didn't want her to suffer. I wanted her to know. To understand what she'd thrown away. The man she'd left behind wasn't crawling anymore. He was towering. The morning of the meeting, I arrived early. My office was quiet, the kind of stillness that hums before a storm. I sat behind a glass desk, reviewing reports, pretending I wasn't waiting for something deeper than paperwork. Claire peeked in. She's here. My pulse didn't spike. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. Send her in, I said. She hesitated. Sir, forgive me asking, but are you sure you want to do this? I looked at her, calm, composed. Some debts are paid in silence. Some need witnesses. She nodded and stepped out. A moment later, the door opened. And there she was. Maya stepped in hesitantly, a child clutching her hand. The boy's eyes darted around the room, wide, curious. He couldn't have been older than 6. She looked at me and smiled politely, the kind of smile you give strangers with authority. She didn't recognize me. Not yet. Mr. Ward, she asked softly. Please, have a seat. She sat down, adjusting the papers in her lap, hands trembling slightly. I appreciate you taking the time to see me, she began. I wasn't sure anyone would respond. I studied her face as she spoke. She looked smaller somehow, fragile in a way that didn't suit her. Her confidence, once sharp enough to cut, had dulled. I read your proposal, I said evenly. Tell me about it. She explained the project: housing for struggling mothers, childcare centers, vocational training. Her voice carried passion, but also desperation. I could hear it between every breath. When she finished, I asked quietly, and how did you come to start this program? She hesitated. Life didn't go as planned. The silence that followed felt like confession. Her son shifted beside her. She placed a hand on his head gently. I just want to build something good. Something lasting. For a moment, I saw the girl I once loved, the dreamer who wanted to fill our home with light. Only now, her light flickered. You've put together a compelling proposal, I said, closing the file. Tell me, Maya, do you believe in second chances? She looked at me, uncertain. I'd like to. Even if the past doesn't deserve them. She frowned slightly. We've all made mistakes. What matters is learning from them. I leaned back, studying her. And do you think everyone you've hurt feels the same? Confusion creased her brow. I'm not sure what you mean. I smiled faintly. You will. For a few seconds, I let the silence stretch, watching recognition crawl across her face. Her gaze flicked to my nameplate on the desk, Ethan Ward. Her breath caught. Her eyes widened. Ethan, she whispered, disbelief and fear mixing in her voice. I didn't answer right away. I just watched her expression fracture, the shock, the shame, the realization of irony so cruel it almost felt divine. Finally, I spoke. It's been a while. She covered her mouth, shaking her head. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. I know, I said calmly. If you had, you wouldn't have come. Tears welled in her eyes. Ethan, Don't, I interrupted gently. You don't owe me words. Just the truth. She looked down, voice trembling. Ryan's gone. After everything fell apart, he left. No warning, no support. I've been trying to start over. The boy glanced at her, confused, tugging at her sleeve. I studied her quietly. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even vindictive. I just was. After a long pause, I said, you once told me I wasn't enough. Seems you finally found out what that actually means. She flinched. Ethan, please. I didn't come here for pity. I came because I need help. For him. She looked at her son, voice breaking. He deserves better than what I can give. Something twisted inside me, not compassion, but the ghost of it. I leaned forward. And you thought I'd help you raise his child? Tears streamed freely now. I didn't know who else to turn to. I nodded slowly. No, you wouldn't. Because when you burned every bridge, you never thought one would rebuild higher. The silence after that was heavy. She looked at me with something I'd never seen before, not arrogance, not ambition, just regret. I stood, buttoning my suit jacket. You'll receive an answer about your proposal in writing within the week. Ethan. This meeting is over, Maya. She rose shakily, gathering her papers. Her son looked between us, confused. As she reached for the door, I added quietly, you were right that day. I wasn't enough for the life you wanted. So I built one that doesn't need you. She froze, then left without a word. When the door clicked shut, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Claire entered moments later, concern etched on her face. Everything okay, sir? I glanced out the window, city lights glinting like 1,000 unshed tears. Yes, I said softly. Everything's exactly as it should be. That night, I poured myself another drink and watched the skyline. Revenge didn't feel like fire, it felt like closure. Cold, silent, absolute. The man she'd buried was gone. And in his place stood everything she could never destroy. She sat there like someone who'd rehearsed humility and still got it wrong. Her hands were clasped tight around a thin folder. The little boy at her side, Ryan's eyes, unmistakable, played with a crumpled paper plane, oblivious to the magnitude of the room. He hummed under his breath, a small sound that kept the air honest. Maya didn't look at the skyline. She looked at the glass between us and then at me, like seeing someone twice can erase what came between. Her voice trembled when she began again, the proposal spilling out in hopeful, nervous bursts, childcare spaces, sliding scale rents, a communal kitchen to teach trades. She painted the children's faces in broad strokes, what they could become if someone would only fund the start. I listened. I've learned that listening is a weapon when used coldly. You collect words like evidence. You wait for the confession. When she finished, she drew a breath as if expecting applause. Thank you for seeing me, she said. I know the foundation gets dozens of requests, but this isn't just a project. It's a second chance, I finished for her. My voice was smooth, which made her look up. She blinked, then folded in on herself like a paper map. She set the boy on her lap. He's the reason I'm here. I can't afford daycare and classes and a safe place for him. I don't have anyone. He, Ryan, left when everything collapsed. I've been doing my best, but it's not enough. Her mouth trembled around the last words. Please. For him. For a moment, my chest felt like winter. But the winter is over now. It didn't crack. It is preserved. I said, flatly, we'll approve the grant. Relief flooded her face so fast it was almost childlike. She started to cry, hiccuping with gratitude. She reached across the desk and took my hand. Thank you, Ethan, thank you. You won't regret this. Her fingers found mine. For a second I felt the echo of an old warmth, the kind that used to anchor me. Then I let it go. I let the warmth wash away like someone rinsing salt from a wound. I stood. Sign here, I said, sliding a pristine check across the desk. Her eyes lit. She tasted the promise and leaned forward. I watched her pen hover, hand shaking with excitement. Then, in the quiet of my own control, I took the check back. She looked up. Confusion, then worry. I'll write the organization a single check, I said, voice low. But not to you. Her face shifted. What do you mean? I held out another document, an official redirect form, stamped and sealed. The grant, all of it, would be entrusted to the Evelyn Ward Foundation, my mother's name, the small charity that ran community shelters and skill programs. The check would fund their expansion, and all program oversight would be done by their board. You're redirecting the funds, she said, disbelief sharp in her voice. But, my plan. You did a good job drafting it, I said. It's viable. But you won't run it. She stared at me, insult and panic and something like betrayal passed across her face. Ethan, I told you, Ryan left me. I don't have the resources to manage a large grant. I need seed money to get started, please, I can manage it if you just. If you wanted to manage it, you should have thought about managing consequences before you left a man who trusted you, I said. The words were surgical. You asked me to raise his child. You asked me to clean what you scattered. That's not how debts are repaid. Tears streamed down her cheeks. The boy looked up, rubbing his eyes, sensing the change though he didn't understand the mechanics. She reached for him and held him tight like a shield. Ethan, please, she whispered. He's my son. I'm asking for help. Don't do this to him. I felt something like the old pity stir for a beat, thin as a blade. Then I put it away. You asked me to raise his son, I repeated. You wanted me to step into a role you abandoned. Maybe you thought I'd be soft. Maybe you thought because I loved you once, I'd be anything you needed. She sniffed, panic rising into anger. How can you say that? I left because I had to. You left because life with me was smaller than the life you imagined, I said. You chose scale over quiet. You chose risk over the slow building we promised each other. You chose him. Fine. Her shoulders shook. You're cruel. Maybe. I folded my hands. Or maybe I'm practical. I slid the sealed envelope across the desk so she could see the name, Evelyn Ward Foundation. She read it, and something inside her rearranged. The mockery she once lobbed at my mother's small charitable gestures, remembered barbs about sentimental waste, came back to haunt her as the ink dried. She used to volunteer at a shelter. You used to, her voice crashed against a wall of realization. You gave money to that small foundation when we couldn't afford coffee. You never told me you had this. I never needed to, I said. You had other priorities. She stood abruptly, gathering her papers with hands that trembled. The boy clung to her skirt, face confused. He had seen so little of the world except survival, he didn't need this lesson. Please, she begged, voice raw. Please let me keep a portion. Let me run this locally. I can make it work. I shook my head. You won't be running it. It will be managed by people who don't sleep less for clients or fold their lives into someone else's dreams. It will be run by those who keep promises. Her face crumpled as if pressed. She sank back into the chair, the fight gone. You're punishing me with charity, she said, the accusation like a dull knife. I'm closing the ledger, I replied. You wanted a better life. I built it. Without you. My voice was quiet and absolute. She rose then, slowly, carrying the boy like fragile luggage. For a second she turned. Her eyes found mine, wide, hollow, asking for something that had been amputated years ago, forgiveness, pity, or perhaps an answer. You were right about one thing, she whispered. I wasn't enough. No, I said. You were enough for what you chose. You weren't enough for what you left behind. She left the office without another word. The corridor swallowed her small, broken figure and the staccato footsteps of a child learning to be brave. The door closed with a soft click that echoed like a verdict. I sat for a long while after, hands folded, the skyline indifferent. My heart did not swell. It did not cave in. It simply beat at a steady, even measure. A ghost I'd carried for years finally found its grave. Outside, somewhere below, a car horn honked, someone laughed, life kept happening in sharp, bright fragments. I poured the last of my drink down the sink. The silence in the room felt new and clean, like a page set down after a confession. I reached for the phone and sent a simple instruction to Claire, finalize the redirection. Ensure the foundation executes every clause. No exceptions. She replied instantly, understood. I looked out at the city, at all the lights I'd once wished upon. I thought of the woman who'd walked out of a cafe 5 years ago and the small boy who looked like the man she'd chosen. I whispered, not to her, not to him, but to the empty air that had kept my secrets, goodbye. It's strange how peace doesn't announce itself. It just slips in quietly one morning, like the city fog. Weeks passed after that meeting. Papers were signed, funds redirected, and the Evelyn Ward Foundation broke ground on its new shelter downtown. The project went viral online, a story about a man honoring his late mother's work. People called it heartfelt philanthropy. None of them knew the ghost buried underneath it. I stopped thinking about Maya. Or at least, I tried to. But grief has a way of looping, it never ends, it just comes back smaller, quieter, until it finally stops mattering. Then one afternoon, while heading to a site inspection, I walked past a cafe I used to love. It was the kind of place we once dreamed of owning, a corner shop with glass walls and sunlight spilling through. I almost didn't look inside. But habit made me glance. She was there. Behind the counter. Hair tied up, apron faded, serving coffee with the same soft smile that once disarmed me. The boy sat at a corner table, drawing on napkins. He looked older, steadier. She leaned over, wiped his cheek, laughed when he showed her the crooked picture of a house. For a moment, the world felt balanced. Not cruel, just symmetrical. She didn't see me. And I didn't step closer. I watched from the sidewalk, long enough to know she'd found a rhythm again. A smaller life, maybe, but a peaceful one. Then I turned away. The past didn't ache anymore, it just existed. A finished structure. Nothing left to build. As I walked back into the hum of the street, I let the thought settle, calm and final. She once told me love was for dreamers. Turns out, dreams were the only thing she couldn't afford.